The Calgary Flames have traded away many players over the last few months, especially defensemen. But Craig Conroy could still trade away one defenseman for more future assets. One writer predicts that Rasmus Andersson will and should be the next player traded away to complete the rebuild. Before we get into all of that and unpack it all, I want to welcome you to Flames Digest. I am Mark Griffith. If you're new around here and you love the Flames, make sure you subscribe so you can stay up to date on all the latest news, updates, reports, and rumors revolving around your Calgary Flames. We would love to welcome you to the Flames Digest family. But yes, the trade reports are intensifying with Rasmus Andersson. So let's talk about how Andersson could be the next to go. Is he the next to go, or will the Flames, potentially keep him around throughout the rebuild? He'll get a new contract within the next couple seasons. Is it worth it to sign him into, kind of his late 30s? That's what he'll be looking for, sort of thing. We're just going to have to dive in. So we've got an article here from Robert Munich, or Munich, either way, great writer for Flames Nation. And here's the article he has made. The Calgary Flames should trade Rasmus Andersson between now and the 2025 trade deadline. So pretty much any time now, get the most back you can, or hope that he has a good season and trade him away at the upcoming trade deadline, I should say, next year's trade deadline, of course. And Andersson, it's not exactly news that he's sort of in the trade board, in the rumor mill, but I guess it is intensifying. And Robert Munich here. Munich, I'm so sorry if you're watching this. I totally butchered your name. But either way, he has got some ideas of why Andersson probably should be traded. So let's dive in. What we haven't seen are any win now moves talking about kind of this summer. It really shows that we are going into a rebuild. They didn't trade any of their assets for veteran players. They didn't sign any free agents to long-term contracts. Obviously, with Mantha, it was just the 1 year. The couple others that went around were not for long. And they didn't bring in any veteran starting goalie. No, it was just Devin Cooley, who has played less than 10 games in the CHL. Their actions show that they are rebuilding. With that in mind, are there any other players on the roster that they should look to move in the spirit of rebuilding? There's one name that comes to mind, and it's Rasmus Andersson. Razzmatazz. Raz, yes, the man who can bounce back from anything. He can blow a player up at the end of the game, maybe serve a suspension, but whatever. It is worth it. And Raz, it truly is kind of honestly maybe time to trade him. I do really like him. I know he's a fan favorite, but he's just worth so much. And are we really willing to give him that much of our cap space, especially with some of the other young defensemen we have coming up who will probably want a payday as well? We'll just have to see. But let's continue the article here. Andersson has 2 years remaining on his contract with a cap hit of $4.55 million. Not too expensive at all. He is going to become a UFA in the summer of 2026 when he is 29. He turns 30 on October 27th of 2026. Andersson will be looking for a 7 or 8 year contract, likely in the $7 to $8 million AAV range. Obviously, that depends on his play, not only this season, but more so the season after in his contract year. But that's a good kind of, I guess, projection for him. It does make sense if he were to get, around the 7 or 8 years and the 7 or 8 mil. We'll have to see. Players at that age usually want more term to guarantee themselves a contract. But does it make sense for the Flames to sign a 30-year-old to an 8-year contract extension that pays him until his late 30s? They're already going to be paying MacKenzie Weegar until he is 37. So essentially, it would be another MacKenzie Weegar type contract. But there's so many more elements with Weegar that makes sense why we're paying him for longer. He wants to be here. He came over via trade. And you know what? Last season, he did have a much better year. Would we give Andersson the same sort of thing? Not too sure. What type of player is Rasmus Andersson going to be by the time the Flames are actually good again, which could be a few years down the road? Does it make sense to dedicate $8 million or more of cap space to an aging defenseman when you have a ton of up-and-coming talent that is also going to need to be signed to lucrative contract extensions while Andersson is a Flame? Well, at least we hope they'll be playing like they're worth lucrative contract extensions. We can't obviously totally predict what their careers will be like, but looking at Perek, Brustevich, maybe some others, it could be, and hopefully it is the case, that we are signing them to some pretty big contracts. Team-friendly ones, we really hope, but no, we do hope that they do pan out. Andersson's trade value will also never be higher than it is pretty much right now. There are a lot of playoff teams who would be interested in acquiring the top 4 defensemen. That could definitely happen at the trade deadline. There's a lot to like about Andersson's game. My goodness, I'm struggling through this one today. I'm sorry, guys. He is 27 years old, a right shot, can play top 4 minutes. He is affordable on the salary cap, and the acquiring team could get him for multiple playoff runs. It's kind of like trading Noah Hannafin all over again. Andersson only has a 6-team no-trade list, which is not much of an impediment for a trade. And we could probably predict who some of those 6 teams are. It's usually the usual suspects, well, other than Calgary, of course, but, you know, your Columbus, your Buffalo, maybe your Ottawa, some of those teams in there. But either way, Andersson has been a great member of the Calgary Flames for a long time. Moving on from him has little to do with his impact on the ice, but rather where the Flames are as an organization. They are in a full-on rebuild. They are in asset accumulation mode, and they have a lot of prospects on defense who will eventually need to get a spot in the lineup and money on a long-term contract. And that's just the fact of the matter. Now, Andersson hasn't exactly totally publicly said that he doesn't want to be in Calgary, but you can read body language. You can, sense the vibes of how it's going on. And it kind of looked like maybe he didn't want to be here as much. No idea why this video is playing right now. Honestly, not a clue. I guess we get some of that again. But either way, it'll be interesting to see if Andersson does get traded, if he's the next to go. But that goes into, Razz's value. We need to kind of talk about what we could potentially get back for him. Obviously, he's a sensational player. So first thing I wanted to look at here, if we can pull it up, is these are his stats from last season and his career. So last season, a bit of a down season, 9 goals, 30 assists for 39 points and a minus 11 on the year. A point every other game. And it just wasn't great. Talking about those vibes again, you could see sometimes it really seemed like he did not want to be here, didn't want to be part of this at all, and it was a little bit upsetting. But if we look at his career numbers, they're very good. 200 points is what he reached last year. I mean, for a milestone, not in the whole season, obviously, but 200 points in 455 games, not bad at all, but that plus 23 is great. He can be an offensive guy, can contribute on the power play, but he's shown too that he can kind of do it all in terms of defense. He's not the biggest guy, so won't be totally shutting people down like a Zdeno Chara, but he is a jack of all trades, really, at the blue line. Just your bog standard, very skilled, but also very smart and strong Swedish defenseman. Holy, what an alliteration. Get that on his CV. So now that we know his numbers, there's kind of different ways we could go about this, but I believe this is where we can show maybe what he's worth. This is from an article from a couple weeks ago from, I believe it was the Win column. It says, most teams who would show grave interest in Andersson are the ones that would consider themselves potential Stanley Cup contenders. The Flames would certainly be able to net a first-round pick, though fans should be prepared that it could come in the back half of said first round. The return doesn't end there. However, given that the Flames may have to settle for a later first-round selection, they would also be in line to get a legitimate top prospect. They were able to net one in Hunter Brustevich in the Elias Lindholm trade, and Lindholm was on an expiring contract. So Andersson could be worth more since you could have him for at least a couple playoff runs. And the Flames here would get hopefully a prospect like Brustevich. It's hard to get him as good as him, but also getting a first-rounder. The Elias Lindholm trade is a pretty good comparison here. Given Andersson's term, the prospect coming back would, or at least should, be of even higher caliber. So even better than Brustevich. One of the, other team's top prospects is really what we'd be going for. And it's interesting. We'll have to see what does happen with Razz, but the trade reports, they're continuing and continuing. He's next on the block. We had the whole Jacob Markstrom trade rumor saga. We had Mangiapane for a little bit. Now it's Andersson's turn to go through all of this. Welcome, Razz. We're going to be talking about it a lot. Now let's wrap up this video with the comment of the day, which has to do with last video, which was, of course, about Dustin Wolf re-signing with the Calgary Flames, which was amazing to see. And we got a good one here from Flames Hockey Fan, and they said, not a bad spot to be in. Never seen the fan base this hopeful through a rebuild before. And yes, the last few videos have all been on the goaltending situation, and people are optimistic. If Dustin Wolf pans out, it's going to be so good. And our current situation really isn't all that bad for where the Flames are expected to be. Honestly, it's fantastic, and it's not the worst time ever to be a Flames fan, I suppose. Yes, we're going to stink, but at least we'll have some hope. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please subscribe if you like what you saw here today, and have a wonderful rest of your day.